Well, hi there. So in this video, we're going to learn about the first two types of money markets. First one is going to be called the money market, kind of obvious. The second one's called the reserves market. And this is a special type of money in which we're just talking about the market for bank reserves. So let's get started. Okay, so the first part up here just kind of tells you that there are three different money markets we're going to talk about in this class. And this first one is just called the money market. And it's really the market for all of the money in all of an economy. And I'll get to in a moment what that really means. The second type of market we're going to learn about is called the reserves market. And we're going to learn about both of these in today's lecture. And then the third type of money market is going to be the loanable funds market. And the loanable funds market is the market for borrowed money. So in other words, where people go and they borrow money and where people lend money. And so that market we're going to reserve for another day, another lesson. Now, the first market that we're going to learn about, as I said, is the money market. And this is used to model the money supply in banking systems where they have limited reserves. So this is key here. You're only going to be doing it when the banking system has limited reserves. The other one, the reserve market, we're going to be using when the banking system has ample reserves. And the way we're going to kind of explain it is I think it's easier to understand it just by drawing the graph first. So I'm going to talk through this information up here as I kind of show you what the graph looks like. So first, we're just going to put quantity here. You could put QM if you want to. That's not a big deal. We're going to use lowercase I, and we really, to be accurate, we want it to say sub N for nominal interest rate. That's right up here, nominal interest rate. It's equivalent to the policy rate that we're going to be kind of discussing quite a bit in this class and that we have discussed quite a bit. So if you wanted to write policy rate, that would be fine. It's really that interest rate that's being targeted when they actually change the money supply. So then we have a downward sloping demand for money curve. And let me briefly outline why that is. Like, why is this an inverse relationship between interest rates and the quantity of money that people want to hold? So one first thing to understand is that the demand for money is the amount of money that people are willing and able to hold. And when I say hold, I mean like hold on to in their cash, in their checking accounts, or in their savings accounts, in their M1. And so maybe a way to think about this is, why do people need M1 money? And they need it for a few reasons. They need it for buying stuff. They need it for maybe buying stocks and bonds. And they need it in case of emergencies. So these are really the reasons why people need money: transaction, speculative, and precautionary demand. These three types of demand for money are what really make up this demand curve. Now, the reason why it's inversely related is here, right? This is the inverse relationship of interest rates and quantity demanded. And we would say that the cost of money is giving up this interest. So in other words, the cost of holding on to it. So if I imagine two worlds, one world with really high interest rates, people aren't going to want to hold very much money. The quantity of money they want to hold is very low. And at very low interest rates, way down here, the amount of money that they want to hold is quite high. And the reason here is that as the interest rate goes up, we would say that people basically are giving up the opportunity to earn interest on their money. And so when interest rates are very high, you're losing out on earning that interest because you're holding on to cash rather than actually investing it into a financial asset. As opposed to at lower interest rates, you really don't have very much of a cost to holding on to extra cash in your wallet, in your checking account, or in your savings account, where they don't really earn very much interest at all. They don't earn interest really in a checking account, and functionally they earn no interest in a savings account. So we're kind of thinking about really this interest is just the opportunity cost of holding money. And so as it rises, the opportunity cost rises, so people don't want to hold as much. Now, there are shifters of money demand. We're going to get to those in just a second, but I want to draw the money supply curve first. So the money supply curve is vertical. That's because the central bank picks Q star amount of money that they want to create. So when the central bank creates more money, the curve shifts to the right. When they decrease the money supply, it shifts to the left. Now, the shifters of the supply of money are listed here. These are the limited reserves tools, right? These are the limited reserves tools. And so we have discount rate, reserve requirement, and open market operations. And so really, these are just the tools that we learned about in 8.3 about central banks. Now, if we were to say decrease the money supply, right, or increase it, that would be to the right. So an increase is to the right, and a decrease is to the left, as always. And so let's just quickly show what it would look like maybe if the Fed bought bonds. And so if the central bank buys bonds, which is a really, really common thing they're going to ask you to draw on the exam, we would just say that here, this money supply curve shifts to the right, and we want to show the effect on the interest rate. Always, we're going to show that effect I star to I 1, and so the interest rate gets lower as a result. And so really this is just kind of illustrating the mechanism, right? We could say Fed buys bonds. That's what it would look like, is that would increase the money supply and thus lower the interest rate. Now let's take a look at this reserves market. Now the reserves market is used when we're talking about a banking system with ample reserves. And so it's basically the same concepts as what we just talked about with the money supply, but it's a little bit different because if you can imagine, maybe if we push the money supply really far out, like if we were to have, I'm just going to kind of put a little picture over to here. If we were to have a demand curve like that, and a supply curve like that. But now imagine that, this demand curve just keeps on going because it becomes like, goes that way. And imagine if we push the money supply way over to here, right? Well, what would happen? Interest rates would go all the way to 0, basically. And it would be very, very challenging for the central bank to actually pull that money supply all the way back. And in 2015, basically, they decided they didn't want to sell bonds in the amount that it would require to get us back into a limited reserves framework. There are a variety of reasons why they didn't want to do that. But what they found, the central banks of the world really noticed, was that having an ample reserves banking system created a great deal of stability. And so in 2008, when they responded to the financial crisis by increasing the money supply to this huge, huge amount with trillions of excess reserves, they found that really the central problem they were running into was just that they couldn't get the interest rate to go back up again, which is a little bit of a problem. But really, they kind of liked the ample reserve system, and they couldn't make banks couldn't make banks get rid of it. Now, what the first thing we're going to do is just draw kind of the axes. And I'm going to note here that here the axis is labeled policy rate. We really do want to make sure that we are labeling it here must do with policy rate. That's because the College Board is not going to allow us to use just interest on that one. Now, the other trick to this thing is going to be that the top of the demand curve for it is actually going to kind of flatten out. And let me kind of talk about why that is. So it's a standard looking demand curve up to about here. Here it flattens out. And that's because there's this thing called the discount rate. The discount rate. And the discount rate effectively is a price ceiling on this demand for money. And the reason why is that, remember, the discount rate is the rate that banks would pay if they borrowed from the Fed. And there's no reason for any bank to borrow from anybody else at something greater than this discount rate, because they could just get that money from the Fed for paying the discount rate. So why would they pay someone else a higher policy rate than that? So functionally, what this discount rate is a price ceiling. Right, so the discount rate is equal to a price ceiling on interest, right? That's what that discount rate amounts to, is what it is. Now here we're going to have another little bend, and it's going to go that way, and that's because what was going to be down here is a different number, and this is going to be the interest on reserves. Interest on reserves. Now, these two interest rates are the administered interest rates that we've actually been kind of talking about in 8.3. Interest on reserves is the price floor. It's a price floor because you wouldn't want to lend your reserves, right? Thinking about if you have them, you wouldn't want to lend them to another bank for something less than what the Fed is paying you, because this is paid by the Fed. Right. And so if they're paying you, let's say, 2% interest on your reserves and you're a bank, you wouldn't lend that money to anybody else for less than 2 because you would be losing money. You could get 2% just for free for doing nothing from the Fed. And the money supply is going to be way out here, way over here to the right. And so the intercept of the money demand and the money supply curve is at this kind of X, right? It's the kind of cross where that crosses. And this demand curve would be coming all the way down and it would be bottoming out, but for that minimum price floor. And so the way that actually they change the interest rate, and the interest rate is determined right here, right? So I'm just going to put right in there. Whoop. That's the policy rate, PR star, is right here, right? That's PR star. And it's appropriately labeled on this side. And so the intercept is still that policy rate, is where supply and demand is intercepting. It's a little bit easier if we don't label all of the price floor and the price ceiling. And in fact, you don't have to do that. So I'm just going to kind of show what this would look like on an exam. You wouldn't need to put that part. You just put policy rate QM, and then we're going to draw that, come down, and then come back over again, just like that. So that's our money demand. And so this is really what you would draw on an exam, right? And then a vertical supply curve. And first we want to identify what's the current current policy rate, so that would be PR star. And if we wanted to show, say, the administered interest rates decreasing, we're actually just going to show the two tails bending farther down. So basically, we're going to come down here, right? So this one comes down, and then this one tracks along with it, and then it continues to come down a little bit until we come back over again. And so that's going to be D sub 1. And it looks like demand is actually shifting down. It looks like that, but it's not actually happening. What's happening is that the price floor and the price ceiling are moving down. And that's basically forcing this demand curve into a slightly different shape. And so the quantity of money actually stays the same, right? Notice the stays the same quantity of money, but the interest rate, the new intercept is now PR1. And so that's actually how they would decrease interest rates, is they would basically shift down that price floor and that price ceiling, the discount rate and the interest on reserves. And when they move that down, and again, we didn't draw that here because it would be a little bit messy, especially because the IOR is almost right where that policy rate ends up being. But basically that bends these two curves down. And when we shift them down, it causes the bends to move down as well. So that was maybe probably an over explanation of what that last little one was, but it is such kind of a quirky looking market. You've got this weird looking demand curve with that one, and you've only got that one with this one. So they look a little bit different, but hopefully that helped you. We'll see you next time.